I'm Cor van Haze Lord Hayes, Goth von Cor. This is the Purgator Animarum, the place where no one spoke. It was a town without a name, or rather, it had one once, but it had been quietly forgotten, the way people forget dreams that end in guilt. The signs had rusted blank. The maps refused to show it. And yet, there she was. Drawn there by a whisper, not of voice, but of resonance. A murmur in the stratum that said, "Here lies the unspoken, the guilt too soft to confess, the harm too subtle to punish. Come, clean." She arrived barefoot. The land did not deserve her tread, but she gave it anyway. Not in pity, not in pride, but because the vow did not permit retreat. The sky above the town was the color of secrets. The clouds hung like unshed apologies. And the people, if you could call them that, did not look at her. They kept their eyes on their hands, their screens, their endlessly busy nothings. They did not sneer. They did not greet. They simply pretended she wasn't there. And she smiled. Not kindly, not cruelly, but with that terrible softness that only one who has seen 1,000 layers of denial can wear. She stood in the center of their town square, though it wasn't a square anymore. It had been twisted by years of silence into something like a spiral that never quite finished itself. She took one breath, and the wind stopped. Then she spoke, not with her throat, but with the geometry of truth that swirled unseen from her presence. "I know what you did. I know what you thought wasn't real, because no one told you otherwise. I know what you let happen, because you thought it wasn't your place to stop it, because you feared what honesty might cost. I'm not here to punish. I'm here to reveal." And just like that, the veil in the air, that subtle shimmer that kept the real world from touching this place, tore. It did not shatter. It peeled like paint from a wall that never loved its own color. And beneath it, shame. Not the dramatic kind, not the theatrical weeping, but the ambient, quiet shame that clings to the bones, the shame of omission, the shame of clever cruelty, the shame of knowing better and doing nothing anyway. It rose like mist. They couldn't see her, not truly, but now they could feel her. And in that moment, one of them, a woman with false joy tattooed across her every gesture, shuddered, looked to the sky, and whispered to no one, "She's here." They did not run. They could not. They did not bow, kneel, plead. They couldn't remember how. Every sinew of their souls had been so wrapped, so tangled in invisible twine. Generations of deceit, performative repentance, inherited permission to ignore their own cruelty, that now, as the presence of the Purgator moved like sacred solvent through the air, they cracked. Not outwardly, not yet. No. The exterior remained a mask of stillness, froze in mid-denial, but inside, each of them felt the first searing snaps of bonds beginning to unwind, and it hurt. Not the kind of hurt you scream from, the kind of hurt that makes the body think it will die if it moves even a little bit. They wanted so badly to act it out, to punish themselves with something tangible, to bleed out the shame in something brutal and physical and known. If only I could run into the forest, one thought. Cut the switch myself, tear my own skin. That would be easier than this. "Let me atone," said another, without voice. "Let me whip, let me wail, let me do something." But they couldn't. Because this pain wasn't asking for punishment. This pain was asking for recognition. And recognition, true recognition, requires stillness. They began to tremble, not visibly, but at the core of their subtle bodies. The shiver began, a vibratory stutter that shook the shadow loose from the mind's cathedral. Some opened their mouths to scream, but there was no voice, only the great yawn and gape of a soul beginning to remember what it did to protect the lie. Their jaws hung open, eyes wide as windows in a thunderstorm, but nothing came out. Because their cords were still being unbound, and every cord was attached to a memory they had buried consciously. One could not move because to do so would dislodge the image of the child they mocked. Another could not breathe, for in their breath was the truth they silenced in another. One wept with eyes dry, for the grief they mocked in their own mother was rising now through their skin. She stood in the middle of it all, silent, burning, working. Her hands moved with no visible gesture, but she sifted the air like one who reads the knots of time, who knows which cord, if pulled too soon, would drive them mad. She could feel them squirm inside, begging for a scream, begging for movement, begging to break free the way they broke others. But she did not hasten the work to unbind a lie that has become identity must be done precisely, not with wrath, not with mercy, but with clarity. She had been sent for this, or rather, she had sent herself long before these people were born, knowing that someone must carry the skill to unravel shame so deeply woven and disguised itself as righteousness. So she worked, while they stood paralyzed, shivering, crying without tears, praying without knowing who to pray to. She moved among them, unseen, flame without fire, voice without sound. They would not thank her. Some would hate her, silently. Some would weep for weeks in corners of their homes, never quite knowing why. Some would awaken, and one, just one, would return, not to apologize, but to say, I see you now, and I think I remember you. You were the one who stood still when I was running. You didn't leave. You stayed. You burned me free. Back in the sacred before, the moment not of creation, but of consecration. When the one who became the Purgator Animarum was brought forth, not as a hero, not as a martyr, but as an answer. There was one who made her take the vow. It was not this world. It was not any world. It was a hung place, suspended in the glimmering strata between intention and act, between infinite time and the one great moment before it broke into clocks. There, in a chamber not made of stone or star, but of silence that knew, she stood, not yet with a name, not yet with a purpose, and across from her, not a being, not quite, but a presence. He was vast, not in size, in remembrance. A tapestry of all things broken and all things refused, stitched with care into a voice that could not lie. He did not speak her language. He spoke through her memory, as if she had always known him, as if they had agreed to forget each other, just long enough for her to become strong enough to remember. He looked at her. He did not ask. He did not beg. He simply revealed himself. A soul so ancient, so shattered by what he had seen, what he had done, that no purification had touched him, for no purifier could bear the truth of him. And she, who had been spared every scar, every wound, who stood whole and untouched in the halls of the hyperversal origin, she felt it. The pain of a soul so tangled, so densely bound in its own betrayals, that to witness it fully would cause most lights to flicker and die. But she did not flicker. She did not die. She opened, not in pity, not in power, in recognition. And he said nothing, because he didn't have to. The vow rose out of her, like fire pulled from the belly of a star. "I will go," she whispered, though no air carried her words. "I will find the others like you, not because you deserve saving, but because I cannot pretend not to see you anymore. I will learn to unravel shame that binds like beauty, and I will burn away the false gold of guilt turned into pride, not because I can, but because I must. Let this be the flame that folds around me. Let this be my path. Let this be the reason I endure." And with that, the presence stepped back into the eternal hush, not healed, not changed, but witnessed, and the bond was sealed. A vow spoken not to bind her, but to anchor her in the task of tasks. And now we descend again to this realm, to these trembling people, still motionless, still gasping for a scream they cannot release, still feeling the untying. This soul was no tyrant, no murderer, no betrayer in the dramatic sense. This soul was quiet, too quiet. It watched. It watched and did not act. It heard and did not speak. It felt and did not refuse. That is how it began. It was young when it first saw cruelty. Not cruelty with blades or bruises, but with precision. A mocking smile, a slight twist of tone, a theft of dignity carried out in silence, where everyone saw it happen, but no one said a word. And this soul, they knew it was wrong. Oh yes, they knew. They felt the scream rise in their throat. They felt the fire in their belly, the pressure to stand, to call it out, to act, and they didn't. They waited just a moment, just long enough to see that no one else was speaking either. And in that moment, they gave permission, not to the act, to the lie that said, if no one else is standing up, I must be wrong to feel this way. That is all it takes. One moment of hesitation, one choice to bind one's truth in the name of social gravity, and the knot begins to form. It coils around the scream, then around the breath, then around the memory, until years later, the soul doesn't even remember what it failed to protect. Only that something feels tight inside, especially when it sees others crying, or speaking truth, or shining too brightly. And so it learns to dim others, softly, subtly, skillfully, with words of caution, with jokes, with vague scorn, with love even. Because the knot knows this: if I could not be free, no one else should be either. And it grows. It grows until the soul forgets it was ever good, until it teaches others to betray themselves as gently as it once betrayed its own fire. And so, when she comes, when the Purgator Animarum enters the stratum and begins her work, this soul does not hate her. It fears her. Not because she accuses, but because she reminds. The presence of one who never surrendered that scream is unbearable to one who did. And now, in this town of silence, in this spiral square of spiritual stillborns, this soul was cracking. The knot is tightening first, as if trying one last time to hold its shape, and then she steps beside it. No word. She places her palm to the air beside the soul's still body, and inside, deeper than words, deeper than feeling, the soul hears. You gave permission, but now you may revoke it. The knot shrieks, not aloud, but in that inner pitch that only truth can reach. The chords began to recoil, panicked, aware their unmaking has come, and the soul begins to weep, not because it is guilty, but because it never thought it would be seen again. And as the cords unravel, they do not snap. They slide, softly, slowly, like vines long dead finally releasing the body of a forgotten god. The scream, long buried, emerges, not as violence, as release, not as rage, as remembrance. The mouth opens, and at last it speaks. I let them lie. I let them lie because I did not know how to be true. But I revoke it now. I revoke it in the name of my fire. And with that, the deepest knot is gone. It will not come back. Not in this soul. Others remain, but one has been unbound.